All right. So we call the meeting to order. And we see, hey, Jen.
Hi.
Oh,
Thanks for being late.
usually this is early, but we're starting a little, trying to start on time.
Good for you. Apologize for mucking up.
So we have a quorum. Fairly. Any adjustments to the agenda? We're all good? Good. Citizen comments? I'm gonna say no. And that takes us to the minutes, which Max distributed a few days back. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes? Any discussion on the minutes?
Move to accept. the
Move to
minutes.
accept. Do we have a second? All in favor? Unanimous? Perfect. That takes us to the chair report. I had a discussion with John, who is on the EDC just today, and he is resigning. So he's, as we suspected, he started his new business, and he just doesn't have time to make these meetings. So, and I can report that next week he's going to be painting his house, so that'll be exciting. We had our just give a quick update. We had our food pantry today. We had 148 households, which is up. The last food pantry was 132. But my experience is we've kind of been hovering around that 150 mark, which is a lot of households. You know, we do twice a month.
Well, what's the geographical range of this?
So we do Noblesboro, Bremen, and Waldoboro. So that's our geography. We try to stay within, you know, those boundaries. Occasionally we might get somebody who's just out on the outskirts that is in desperate need, and we'll go ahead and deliver food to them. I've delivered to Rockland, for example, when somebody called and they couldn't get food anywhere else. And sometimes you just got to do it, but typically we stay within those boundaries. So we had new households. We had 3 from Waldoboro, and 1 from Bremen. Total people that were parts of those families, 372. And that's made up of 118 children, 186 adults, and 68 seniors. We continue to do our senior meal program, where we do with the Bessie Smith grant. We were able to provide a prepared meal for our seniors, which is going great.
Does local produce enter into the analysis or the options?
Say that again?
Local produce?
Yeah, so if you could have seen today, the local produce is great. So, but you know, it's not, I don't want to say it's hit and miss, but sometimes we could have somebody like Spears donate, you know, a tremendous amount of fresh vegetables to distribute, and then next distribution not get that.
Yeah.
And we see that with all of our donations. Borealis bread, 2 weeks ago, they missed one of their deliveries. And so I actually backed my pickup up to their loading dock and got, I'll bet you 500 loaves of bread. I mean, amazing.
So
But that doesn't always happen. But
opportunistic.
when it happens, it allows us to give 1 or 2 loaves of bread to every family, which is terrific. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of fresh produce right now. We have a lady that donates duck eggs, fresh duck eggs, which is always great. So yeah, it's this time of the year is terrific for fresh produce. And I think that's probably all I have on that. So that takes us, Max, to town updates.
All right. Well, starting with planning board items, at our last meeting, we had an individual who was proposing subdivision up at Reef Road. She's just at the pre-application phase right now, so it's gonna be a few months before we get to that. But initially, she was proposing about 5 lots that would be for sale for residential use. For the upcoming meeting, we have someone who would like to have an RV campground at 220 Main Street. That's just at the top of the hill here. That's not permitted right now based on our zoning, but they're doing a pre-application to see if the planning board would consider maybe proposing amending the land use ordinance in November so that the use could be at the top of the hill. So there's no commitment at this time, but if planning board just sees any other problems and raises it, the applicant could just say, well, we're not going to wait until November then for this potential review. We'll just.
What's the zoning there now?
So right now, that lot is zoned as Route 1B. And their proposed use needs to be where campgrounds would be allowed, and that's Route 1A and rural districts.
Oh, okay.
So is that at the top of the hill on the west side of town or the east side of town?
Yeah, so if you're driving to Damerscotta, it would be on your left side,
Going up the hill
going up the hill to Damerscotta.
from Ralph's or what used to be Ralph's, yeah.
Right.
Tucker's.
And it's the same site that has the tool repair place and where the fiber arts people used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's on that same site.
How many acres is that?
10 or 11, I believe.
It'll actually kind of be a neat location for for a little park.
The state requires quite a bit of land per campsite.
But that would be next to the town forest?
It would be close to it. I wouldn't call it in a butter, but it would be close to it.
Did you say 220 or Route 1?
It's
Or is it-
it's 220 Main Street.
Oh, I misunderstood. Okay, I misunderstood. Yeah.
And it would have to be accessed along Main Street instead of Route 1. DOT's kind of been very clear. They would, if a lot has 2 different roads, the curb cut entrance would have to be on the lesser one instead of on Route 1.
But I'm gonna interrupt you now, but that doesn't surprise anyone. A few months ago, there was a conversation of the land on the east-south side of Route 1 and connecting a road behind Moody's, and then it turned out there was wetlands.
That was on the other side of town,
Yeah, up
that way.
that way, yeah.
Yeah.
That's just a dead topic. There's no,
Oh, we're talking about the utilities up near the Union Road intersection?
yeah,
Yeah, very different topic, but that was gonna have a lot of wetlands on the west side of the property, and then there was a lot of ledge supposedly that would make it a bit hard to get the water up there.
but is there a great single parcel of land that's still in the market?
At that intersection, probably, but once we heard of how much it was probably gonna be to get the utilities up there and.
Yeah, so it fell apart from this standpoint,
Right,
but in terms of places where people can do stuff. If you weren't trying to have utilities and didn't want to have one road that was 2 miles long.
possibly it would be something you'd have to talk to the landowner about.
Okay.
Is that offer still available to the town
For that,
for that property?
possibly, we'd have to just talk to them again.
Is it one landowner?
So what's
Yeah,
curious,
technically.
so I know, so what's curious is that, the definition of. I know you guys probably don't want to hear this, but the definition of wetlands has changed.
Yeah. that's
Right.
part of
And it's
something.
very possible that what we considered wetlands isn't wetlands anymore. Like, according to the courts.
Right.
No, obviously, we wouldn't want to do anything that would disturb valuable wetlands. But if it's one of these, we did it once a year, it floods and gets wet and there's no birds living there, there's no animals living there, it's not creating a
It
habitat
was a
of any
technicality
kind.
that stopped us, and the technicality changed,
Right,
then you might think about.
then you might want to think about it again. I think that's true.
And I can certainly check again. Another part of it was just getting the water from Main Street to the rest of Route 1 was the other big
It's a big part of
challenge.
that, yeah.
Which we're already, that was gonna be part of the town update. We're gonna be doing a water study with Wright Pierce, I think, with the engineering firm. They're going to see exactly how much it would cost to get the water to the Moody's Boreal Spreads intersection so that they can be hooked up to the water system. Both businesses did.
And we
ask
were
for-
talking further north of Moody's, right, for that property?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's at the 235-1 intersection.
yeah, and south,
West,
Yes.
or what, well,
I don't.
I'm
down
thinking
east.
of Route 1 as being north-south.
Listen, the property itself is at the Route 235 intersection.
Right. Right, but on the Waldeboro side of that. Yeah, right.
John makes an interesting point about the definition of wetlands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what
Maybe worth
what
exploring.
determined the wetlands in that case. You know, I can give you, my personal example is, I abutted, well, actually, I didn't abut, it was part of my parcel. That, once a year, the rains came and there was a storm drain pipe that crossed
Swale.
under the street onto my lowland piece of property, and it flooded. For years and years and years. It didn't connect to the pond. It wasn't,
It just got wet.
it just got wet.
Yeah.
So it was a low area that got wet and dried out. So you could walk over it. It wasn't. And so what the Supreme Court said was that, wait a minute, if it's a wet area that dries out, it's not wetlands.
Yeah.
That's just, a low-lying piece of property. It has to have a physical connection.
It's not
Sure.
quite that simple, though. When they survey land to determine whether it's wetlands, they focus not only on water levels, they look at plants
Right.
and whether they're wetland plants, and they
Yep.
do look at
Yep.
the species that are living in there.
Yep.
So
It seems like this could be a separate task and a separate committee to review all that stuff. I don't think anyone's wrong, because there's a lot of interesting things you want to proceed and not do any harm.
Yeah, I mean,
But
so-
we could burn the whole night talking about it.
Right.
I'm gonna
Yep.
say that this might be more of a report that someone could
Yeah,
probably.
it's super interesting.
The other really interesting part is that it isn't that we necessarily want to disturb what's considered wetlands. It's just that there's a ruling you can't build within, 100 feet of it. And so that's where your limitation tends to be.
So it is worth investigating on that to see if it might have an impact.
Yeah.
But-
All right.
Yeah, just as,
Uh,
I mean, just as a case in point, take a look at what they did when they had to do the new School of Technology, the high school technology school. I had a friend, Janet, on the committee, and they had 50 properties to look at, and each and every one of them was eliminated because it wasn't wetland, because it opened onto Route 1 and a school bus can't come out onto Route 1, this and that. And that's why it's exactly where it is in downtown Rockland, just moved back to build that new building, which was kind of like, but half the new buildings they're building for the school, they had a wetland margin. So instead of being able to build a more functional building that allowed for expansion, they're in one corner of the property.
Yeah.
That happened at the Owl's Head School. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but it just seemed that's what happens when there's too many different departments got a piece of the action.
Yeah.
So-
Yep.
But it was an interesting tale. She was telling me what they went through for that,
Oh, it
just to
sounds
end
like
up at the same place.
Well,
Sorry.
no, I mean, that's kind of what we have to deal with when we're trying to find out the community center locations and everything like that.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah.
there's so many different, we think we have a spot and then here's the little caveat that we have to address.
Imagine if we tried to put Route 1 in now.
There's so many projects that we take for granted because it got by at the time. Then the next town update I have is the TIF report. So our TIF amendments were approved by the main DECD. And
Oh, good.
had a report go to the select board last week, I believe. And just based on the numbers from what Daryl put together, and this is just assuming we're at the same mill rate and Daryl's numbers don't change all of a sudden. We're looking at maybe 83,500 for this upcoming fiscal year.
Nice.
And that's a total of 144,819 in the TIF account.
In the kitty.
In the game.
Awesome.
And then as for project spending up, and that would 5,000 of which would go to the broadband study for the LCI fiber broadband expansion. And then 11,900, although that's probably reduced now, would go to the water extension study to get it onto Route 1. As for the rest of it, we are just gonna wait and see what the Elm Street culvert replacement's gonna look like. That's something we have $150,000 of, or from Maine DEP, plus there's 60,000 from the Friendship Street School. Depending on what our estimates come back, we might use some of the TIF funds to replace that, so that, because that's been a bit of a thorn in the side ever since, like, I think even before I got here for replacement. I know it's not gonna be the hot topic that's gonna bring jobs, but it kind of needs to be replaced. John Daigle is talking about how it's gonna collapse anytime a heating truck is gonna go over. And the Waldeboro sewer pump is just on the other side of it, so
So why would we go to a TIF for an expense like that?
how else do we fund it?
It doesn't, I mean, the town must have funds for general maintenance of utilities.
No, this is infrastructure,
Okay, general,
so
Yeah.
TIF makes more sense.
TIF
And
doesn't,
it's not an operating item, it's a capital item, basically.
Yeah, part of the TIF amendments that we have, it includes making improvements to the Madomic River watershed, or helping preserve it and expanding the what is it, the species habitats and spawning grounds,
Mhm.
and that's what the Elm Street culvert's gonna do. Making it an open bottom so that the different, I can't remember what's upstream from it, but it'll be a lot easier for them to flow through the Orf Brook into the Madomic River.
okay,
So it helps put it into so it helps the TIF funding it rather than going back to the voters to having.
and trying to get that approved. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
But yeah. That's, since you said the word culvert, 235 is long,
Oh, the Warren one?
that's Warren, but not here, but do you know what's going on there?
Taken a long time.
Is it because
Really
Warren
has.
can't agree on something, or?
No, I think it was just waiting for the funding to come in. I thought I saw that it was being repaired.
I thought it was the piece of the culvert itself that they were waiting for. They weren't around, they weren't.
Oh, couldn't get a piece.
They couldn't get it.
Maybe it's custom
Some
made or
pictures
something like
posted
that.
On some of the message boards that looked like it was coming.
Some
along.
progress, okay.
Yeah.
That's a real distraction at this meeting.
I know they had one collapse on Route 17 and they had it repaired
They
and
got it just like that.
like that, yeah.
It was a town.
I think they
repair,
said it was
not
the
state.
weather. They couldn't do much because it just kept raining. Well, I mean, we just stopped raining in the last couple of weeks. Or what you'd call more than an hour of sunshine.
You got an hour?
All right,
That settles that for the TIF at least.
okay.
And then the only other item I think I have from the town report, and this was just done at the select board 2 hours ago. There will be a special town meeting on September September 8th. That's exactly what I said, September 8th. And that is to approve potentially selling the Hobbs's house that is over at the Sylvania site. Just the house, not the land. The Sylvania committee's been working on is selling off the Hobbs's house. Someone would then remove it from the property and then put it somewhere else, because right now where it's located.
Oh, you're thinking about selling just the building itself, but the town maintaining the land?
Right,
Interesting.
because as it is now, the land won't allow residential use,
Yeah,
so. If
And
some
the house is solid enough to move?
Mhm.
Wow.
That's what they signed out.
yeah. Word on the street.
Yeah, they moved to German church across the river, so I
They
guess.
did.
Well, they're talking disassembling and
Right.
reassembling
So
somewhere
it'd
else.
be easier.
And the other part of that, Max, was if we can't sell it, they will vote to, the part of the warrant article is that we demolish it.
Yeah.
I want the slate up the roof.
Slate's worth a lot of money.
Yeah, good
That's
slate.
worth a lot of money.
Put
It's
in a
quite
bid for it.
thing.
Come on, George.
Just what I need is,
Other than
Do you have
that.
a nice little piece of land out back, put that on.
Other than that, I think it's just the usual rent requests and what Quarry Hill trails are just starting to be worked on right now. That's gonna be multi-use trails for footpaths and mountain biking, hopefully by summer of next year, or April next year. The Mid-Coast Mountain Bike Group. They were just out yesterday and we're happy, we're glad to start going.
And are those guys, are those volunteers or are they semi-professional people?
They've done it before, but it is volunteers doing this. They did the work over in the Thomaston Town Forest and are doing some more expansions there this year as well. And speaking of Quarry Hill, blueberries are ready for picking up there, so if anyone wants to do something, they can get some wild blueberries up there.
Is there a low bush?
Yes, they're maybe at my ankle. Yeah.
Leaning down.
What does
no.
one have to do to be able to pick there? Do I?
Just drive up.
All right, sounds
The ton ups and get a box if you want to, and then go on up.
Yeah,
Well,
we
I can, kerplink, my kerplunk, I'd like to pick into metal.
Are there any rules about picking so you don't
just
damage?
no raking. That's it.
No raking? So it's gotta be picked by hand, wear gloves, I guess.
I don't think I have it
How
picked
would
enough.
you pick my
You
hand?
wear gloves, I think.
I have no idea.
They don't
Yeah.
bite, I promise.
Yeah.
I think any blueberries I've ever picked have been eaten right then.
Well,
That's what happens.
If I come up there and find you right in the middle, Joe.
There are some quartz in the lobby here. If there are people who are interested, they can just take one and go.
All right.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's actually amazing. You go up there, you'll see the side that had a control burn last year from the fire department and which side wasn't done as a control burn.
Hmm.
I'll give you a hint. The one that was burned last year has the blueberries.
Yeah,
That's why they do it.
I was picking in our side field.
Is there parking or is there?
Not really.
Like drive into the coal quarry and
You'll drive all the way up to the top of the hill where the roads split up and then you just park off to the side.
There's a few places on
Where,
one side.
where is the Quarry Hill?
If you go along Depot Street here,
Oh, Depot Street.
it'll be on your right.
it's just a dirt road that goes up a fairly steep hill.
So I assume just past the swimming spot.
It's past the quarry, yes.
Yeah. All right.
I can't officially say swimming spot. Despite what-
The alleged swimming spot.
The place
Oh.
that some people may or may not go swimming.
There is water though.
My
There is
dog-
water.
Can confirm that.
Yes, fishing spot. That's what it is.
Fishing. All right.
All right, that's all I have for that. And next, well, it's the aquaculture moratorium item. We haven't heard anything from DMR and yet about their thoughts on all these moratoriums. I am trying to apply through the Maine Outdoor Heritage Fund for hiring a group to help with a capacity study to see any potential impacts on the river. I'm also reaching out to Bremen and Friendship to be part of that study as well, so that we're getting the entire Madomic River involved.
Impacts in what sense?
Just with the claims that were done that led to the moratorium of if there is a leased out aquaculture farm placed into the Madomic River, how would that impact all the local species that are in that area? That's what the.
So there's a presumption in the analysis that you know how big it is. How, one oyster is different than
Right,
50,000.
yes.
So I'm just trying to figure what they're using for a starting point to do an impact study.
Based on, well, similarly, based on what happened in Damerscott or any other aquaculture farm that's been going on in the state.
I'd look at it a kind of sensitivity analysis.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What's the
Yeah.
impact?
Yeah, there's also court cases right now down in Popham Beach where they're debating who owns the beach.
The New Jersey couple,
That New
Yes.
Jersey couple, yeah.
And that's gonna, well, I have a feeling, I know one of the attorneys, because we're paying him. There's probably gonna be more discussions about, well, no, actually, nobody owns it. Which comes into where you might do something like this. If it's intertidal. If it's intertidal, then I'm not sure who's got jurisdiction, and if it's subtidal, which it would be if it was floating oysters. then it's an even vaguer question about jurisdiction. But I don't think it's up to the town.
There's been precedent, I know, down in Harpswell. They had a similar thing and it had to do with the high tide point. What was public access and what was not, and it was a similar thing, a dispute with a new homeowner.
I always had the same thing 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's gonna get resolved sooner or later, hopefully.
Crescent Beach, that.
Are the owners arguing that they own the beach?
Those the people from New Jersey bought it thinking they would buy it. And because probably the person who had it had a deed that they, anyway, the question becomes, can anybody own it? If you check the deeds, did somebody sell it who didn't really have a clear title to it? And you have to go back maybe 100 years.
To the deed, yeah.
And the problem rose because the neighbors, the people from New Jersey, have always used the beach.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people from New Jersey are saying, "Oh, you're on my beach, you can't be here.
Get off my beach.
Take a hike."
No
Yeah.
trespassing.
Yeah,
What a headache.
I'm just.
So,
glad
so
that-
back in those days, how did they define that barrier? Like, how do they is there a stake? Is there a metal bar out in the water somewhere?
No, that's one of the vagaries of the whole thing. That you want to talk about sucking up a meeting. The intertidal zone has always been since 1647, where you can fish, fowl, and navigate to the extent they knew what those words even meant, or if we know what they meant in 1647. And it was from mean high water out.
Yeah.
If you wanted to build a dock, you could, and you became the proprietor of the dock, but you didn't own the dirt or the land. under
That was on, yeah.
So the people who think they've owned the beach, whether it's Moody Beach or this one in Popham, if you really put your mind to it, they really probably don't, unless they were friends with King George. Literally,
not this King George.
it's spelled differently.
Yeah, so that's fine. Sorry, George, I couldn't resist.
I know. Brought you to the table. Anyway, yeah, you don't get me going on that.
And
So I
so,
don't think the moratorium is ever gonna hold up in the long run, because it's gonna be lawyers getting really rich.
yeah,
Well, we're
I
waiting
agree.
to hear anything from DMR, just any response on this.
I bet you don't.
We probably won't.
they wouldn't want to even get involved, right?
They do their best to not spend legal money.
Yeah.
We know.
Well,
So our challenge will be if somebody buys a piece of property and wants to build some kind of other species farm on the water.
You don't have to buy a piece of property. If you want to grow oysters in the Madonna River, that's a permit you get from the DMR after endless hearings and process. But
Lots
it's,
of money.
well,
The
yeah,
climbers don't run you out of town.
right. I'm not saying it could ever happen or would happen, but you don't have to own land to ask for a permit for agriculture, because the oysters grow where the tide doesn't.
It's like lobster traps, right?
Yeah.
You don't own the land, but you got traps.
Yeah, and oysters, there are some intertidal agriculture projects, but few. They may try and grow cohogs at some point or different kinds of clams, but that's down the road. But if it's oysters in bags and nets, they very seldom grow them where the tide goes out.
Yeah,
They want them in the water. And if the tide doesn't go out, then it's absolutely state property. State jurisdiction.
I know that one clam farm in Damascotta, when you drive over that little bridge, it's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's gotten
Oysters.
Bigger over the years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's oysters, right?
it's oysters.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'd be interesting to see
Chris
what
Davis
impact
has a lot to do with
that has on the river, I guess.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah, and then, I mean, I know I had Worcester parking lot as C. I don't know if you want to start with the housing and then go into the,
let's do the parking lot first.
that's just a very quick thing I want to go over. I have talked with all the businesses that are on Friendship, or at least most of them. I didn't get one or two responses back. So I do have an idea of what the capacity of the lot would be. Now it's just an actual public discussion that I'll have later on in August, to just a public forum, advertise saying, hey, let's talk about the Worcester parking lot in the downtown.
Is there discussion about having access through one of the buildings so you don't have to walk out to the road and up the hill.
Yeah, so there's a little strip next to Come Learn Lunch.
That dirt road,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that's not what you're talking about.
I'm talking
You're
about
raising
going-
an interesting question.
I'm saying going through one, you can walk in the back of underneath the
Uh,
narrows and come up in the narrows and come out. But if there was a straight line where people could walk, or we put escalator in for me, but you put a straight line stairs, that would make it a much more attractive, usable
And
parking.
you get people walking through your store.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That would have to be something one of the businesses would have to do, and
You can do that in Bath. You know, that parking lot they have behind their main street. You can walk into the back doors of some of those stores and walk up and go right through.
Damascotta, you could walk into the back of
And
Rennie's.
and that's
and walk
right,
through.
Rennie's too.
Well, that assumes you ever come out of practice.
It's a main experience.
Yeah.
all I can do is try and plan on the outside areas.
Right.
Well,
Well,
the town
I'm
actually-
saying this, somebody other than me should say, you know, if we had a straight set of stairs going through there, it would make this parking lot much more attractive.
Well, the thought is now that it is a public lot, now all the businesses that are there are seeing, hey, there is public parking that is right below us.
If you could only get into my store without walking 600 yards.
Right.
I would think they would.
Well,
compute that
Jeff Hurd, I'm
themselves.
sure, is already thinking about it.
Yeah,
I may not be doing the right thing, but when I go to work my shift at the used bookstore, I park in the parking lot and I walk just up between, there's a little grass path between the block that has the narrows in it and so forth, and the block that has
Cumberland.
Coast Conservancy. And so I just go up there and nobody's,
And
Well,
nobody
not
will.
that's public.
Yeah, that's.
oh, okay.
Yep.
A very nice little public piece of land that's very handy for my access to the library bookstore, so thank you very much.
That was paid for with a tip.
Go tip.
So yeah, we'll get a public forum later this month. Just keep an eye out for that. And that's really it for town updates.
Okay, so we did have, under old business, the housing dilemma, which we kind of touched on earlier. I don't know if anybody's had any additional thoughts in terms of, is there some way the EDC could be helpful or the town could be helpful in creating new housing for Waldeboro?
Affordable new housing.
Yeah.
So, something that I did pass out to everyone was from the Maine Housing Authority, just saying what a median income it looks like and what the median home prices are. I have that on screen if you, I'll share the screen right now, just so. Oh, I hope I didn't accidentally close out of this.
Uh-oh.
I might have to try and reopen that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to reopen it.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
the short version is, we are remarkably bad at having affordable housing for people to work and live here.
Right.
Yep.
I don't think there's too many more slides you need than just knowing that.
Yep.
And not to diminish the excitement of your slides, but
Well.
is there any silver lining in any of that data?
Not really. You can't really sugarcoat it. One of the things I was gonna show was, if you just looked at 21 to 22. Waldeboro went from a 0.75 affordable, which is still at least close-ish, to a 0.51. We dropped so much because the housing prices just jumped up.
And is that effectively a percent of the number of people who could possibly afford to live and work here?
That's just talking about how much home prices have gone up in 1 year. And this is not just Waldeboro, this was everywhere in our labor market areas.
But that, it was 0.51. What divides by what to give you 0.51?
So it is the average price for a home that can be afforded by a median income divided by how much the homes are selling for right now. So,
Keying off of median income.
right. So if the median income is, I'm going off my memory here, I think Waldeboro
The
was,
midpoint.
I think Waldeboro was like 50,000 for a median income. So a house that would be affordable for that type of individual was about $150,000. Homes have been selling here for 300. So that's where you, so the 150 out of
So just
three.
for a quick arithmetic, there was another place where it said the per hour wage equivalent, it was like 44 or something.
$48 for Waldeboro.
Right. But that's not 50 grand a year, that's more than 50 grand a year. $44 an hour. What's that translate to for a year? I'll just.
$48 over. Well,
Is it a
So
thousand?
that's what is needed for people to be able to make that much money to afford the median house. Is that right, Max?
So what you're looking for, that report? No.
no, that was the tip report. I'm sorry, Jen, what?
So that $48 an hour was what people need to make in order to afford the median house price. Is that right?
Yep,
$48 an hour.
yeah, that's the.
And
that's
so what does $48 an hour translate into per year? That's.
The 51, I think Jan has that, that would be the 51,000 income.
Right,
Or
so-
No, 40, no.
I'm back.
Yeah.
51, no, I'm sorry, I,
117
let,
somewhere.
That would make sense.
51,000 is the average income people are getting now.
Which-
$48 is how much is needed to buy the houses.
So here's the actual number.
about
So in
twice.
Waldeboro, the median house price, this is hard to believe, $307,350. The median income is $51,548. And the income needed to afford the medium house is $101,384.
Yeah.
Which is the 40 something dollars.
Which is the 48.
Yes.
Yeah.
$48.
Quite a bit
Assuming
above
that-
minimum wage.
2,200, yes.
It's basically 50% on average, 50% of what you need.
Yeah.
Does it make assumptions about interest rates as well? It must.
Or taxes,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
and our taxes are actually lower.
yeah, they're going up.
Yeah, someone
I
told me
don't
a
think so. I
formula.
think it's
You,
just the affordability, the house price. I
House
think
is-
that's all it's
That's
based on. It's just the house price.
Yeah, there'd be so many variables.
Calculation.
Never mind running the house.
Then.
Anything that you
Were
say?
about to say something?
Yeah.
yeah,
Concrete.
but like someone told me, if you're going to buy a house, your mortgage is gonna be usually 1% of the purchase price. And you have to factor, and it factors in the cost of insurance. Sometimes if you have to have the mortgage insurance, you have to do the taxes and you have to do the actual mortgage, because the mortgage itself is pretty cheap, but then you add the insurance and the taxes on top of it.
Actually, Sonia, I used to, that's the rule of thumb I used to use, but with interest rates, that was back when interest rates were about 10%.
Mhm.
And interest rates are many things, but at least thank goodness right now they're not 10 last I looked, which is not to say,
That's 7.
but it's a little, it's more like, it's a little less than that, but it's.
Oh, they're
still-
9 to 11%. They're 9 to 11. I just asked, I was talking to a bank about it.
In that case, we're back up to exactly that, yeah.
So what was 1%? I didn't
Of
understand.
the purchase price would be your mortgage payment.
So you bought a $250,000 house, your payment would be about 2,500.
Oh, okay, so your
Inclusive,
monthly payment
yeah.
is, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, well, but this is good because this gives us a kind of a mark in the sand in terms of where, line in the sand, in terms of where we're at. How can we how can we help? How can we?
I barged into Max's office today, pushed the door shut and said, how does this relate to rents and what is, because I don't think that's in there anywhere.
No, and I looked for, there's a different page on the Maine Housing Authority thing. Weirdly enough, they don't have any 2020 data for Lincoln County towns.
For what rents are, or
For what rents are for a 2-bedroom or 2-family apartment or something. Maine Housing Authority doesn't have, the latest information Maine Housing Authority has for Lincoln County is from 2017. That was when they were saying that rent in Booth Bay Harbor was affordable.
Yeah.
I think we can have a good laugh about that right now. But for 2020 data, all I can get is the Rockland area.
It's about 1,100 a month.
Yeah,
Some places do 1,300 a month and they include utilities.
I
If the utilities are included, but I haven't seen any that are under 1,000.
know.
Some people paying 1,500 out towards Portland a month for a studio.
When I looked at the median, when I looked at the price for the 2017, I think it was about 1,200 at the time for Waldeboro, but that was, again, 2017.
Was that including
Yeah,
rents
had
and
something.
utilities?
I probably wasn't. It was just saying the average pretty much for these, like, just taking everything into account. That's what, kind of like what you're seeing for the ownership. There's probably some different factors for how they got to those prices. Same thing with the 2-bedroom places. I'm sorry, Patty.
It's okay. I think we all can agree, the numbers are not what they were 2 years ago, never mind 3 years ago or 2017. So when I was going through the Lincoln County's assessment, what occurred to me is that we need specific Waldoboro data. And is there a way, either through grant money or something, that we can get some of this information, some of the same information, but specific for Waldoboro?
Isn't one of the ones
Current.
Waldeboro? Oh, current.
Yeah, but see, they went, everything they, on that report was based off the latest data was 2020. And that's when COVID happened and the world exploded, and that's why exponentially things have gone up.
Was
And
2022 one of those?
2022 was what the main housing authority was. You're talking about the Lincoln County site.
Lincoln County report. Yep. So that's, is there a way we can get all of our specific data? I think everyone can agree the prices are what they are, but it would be nice to see what those numbers are.
You can see some data in the census that is through the American Community Survey, which is done in individual towns every year. There might be some things that could be pulled there. Also, I think some of the data in the county one was more recent, but they couldn't get consistent data more recent from any specific source for that. So I thought they got, they did talk to realtors, excuse me, and they did talk to supposedly assessors in each town. So, but there is, I don't know who collects all the other data. That'd be interesting. Maybe the realtors could tell you.
So we gotta,
Well, and data point of one, back when we were looking to rent a place while we were building our house, we looked in Waldoboro, we looked in Damascata. Admittedly, we had a dog, but there was absolutely nothing outside of Bath. And even that was vaporware. So we ended up renting in Falmouth. I mean, part of it is, of course, having a dog. They, you know, all of a sudden, 1,800 available places in the coastal area goes to 3. But I do think that the point that was made in the report of simply the inventory just isn't there. As it said in the report, that people are Airbnb-ing it, or they're condoizing it. So I agree very much, Patty, that the idea of really getting a handle on the numbers around here is a good one. And the other thing, I mean, my sense is that our mandate doesn't involve going out and building the homes, but the degree to which there is a role for us to play in terms of thinking about whether there are tax incentives or zoning issues or something like that, that would be disincenting people from providing rentals, might be something we would want.
The levers we can pull, that's a great way to, you know, I was gonna say, what can we do to incentivize?
Yeah.
And but you're absolutely right. We should find out what we're doing already that's disincentivizing. What I was gonna say, when you first said it was, and it's what I talked about when I closed the door. What are the federal, state, and local programs, incentives, acronyms that help people build affordable housing? And because I'm sure that there's 5.
Do they exist?
I bet they do, because they always have. I
Yeah.
just, maybe we become, maybe you click on something and these are the programs that somebody who might want to build a house would look into.
So,
Or
so this is kind of an aside in a way, but not really, which is, you know, I do fundraising for the food pantry.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for grant money.
Right.
And you would be amazed
Oh, it's
how much grant money is out, how many different it's just in Maine.
Yeah.
In Maine. I mean, so, and I've never done a search on grants for, affordable housing,
I
but
bet
it might be
this-
interesting
I
to do
bet,
that.
I bet there's 5 programs that would be relevant to somebody who wants to make some affordable rentals, 2-family affordable rentals,
Yeah.
and in find a place to build them. And
Well, I know,
Sprawl
for-
Block was that originally.
yeah,
Not really anything.
So should I start answering questions or, because I saw like 3 or 4 hands go up as George was ending out there.
any comments? Yeah, Bob.
I just want to point out, we had a seminar not too long ago about incentives for building affordable housing. And you have the Finance Authority in Maine. You have the Maine Housing Authority. You have groups in the state who are formed to promote building affordable housing. It's just you have to find somebody with the capital and the means and the interest
To do it.
in Waldenboro to do it.
But
That's the problem.
so the thing is that it has to be, if it's a business, it's gotta be a
At the end
financial
of the day,
model.
it is a business.
It's gotta be a financial
It's-
model that,
They're all gonna be businesses.
yeah,
Rental income, rental, I think is
It's-
the
It's
direction.
a
that-
business proposition. Yeah.
yeah.
Whatever, when they did the Sprawl Block, it was a program that somebody invested in and built the Sprawl Block.
When, I don't know if I can say this now, but when we were looking at the Friendship Street School, it all keyed into tax credits.
Yeah.
And the marketability of those tax credits. And you do that through Finance Authority of Maine, Maine Historical Society, or the Maine Housing Authority. And you want to use those tax credits to build the investment capital you need to do the project. And there
It
is,
is a
I don't know of
business.
anybody in this town who has any interest at all in doing that.
Yeah.
If you know someone,
Can we start doing some kind of public awareness, raising forums, some kind of campaign, if you will, to try to do something and move it in that
well,
direction?
we
But
just had one. We had how many people? That was a countywide thing.
Oh, you're talking about the Genesis Fund?
Yes.
Mm,
Yeah, so
But I
what
meant
Bob is talking
Waldenboro.
about, and I think you were at that one as well.
Yeah, Patty was there.
I mean, that was inviting anyone who was interested in just this area, pocket of the mid coast, and we did get some people who were responding, but. When we have that, it is probably another marketing item. The part of what Lincoln County now has as part of the ARPA funding is. I think it's $2,000 for any affordable units that people can make. So that's another incentive that is just out there for anyone who wants to make it. And I see everyone's, but I also see, are you raising your hand here?
I was, yeah, for a couple of reasons. One being when at one point in our lives, John and I were considering building a multifamily down in Portland. This was back in 2012, before the cost of building went through the roof. And even then, the only way that things would pencil out was if we could do a 4-unit. That's one issue. The other possibility is Habitat for Humanity. And I don't know enough about its structure, but currently the way that it operates sort of down toward the Bath area is doing critical home repair. So somebody needs a floor replaced or something just so they can stay in their houses. I think it's the 7 Rivers, which is up in the Rockland area. It is actually doing the more classic Habitat for Humanity model where they've got the land and they're working with the families to do the sweat equity and so forth. So there are, that's another way that if we had the land, we might be able to talk to a group. It's less, the model that I'm aware of is for ownership, but why they wouldn't go into rentals, I don't know.
There's a lot of, I saw a thing on the news,
Mhm.
I've forgotten what state or city it was, but there was like 116 2-family homes all jammed into, with side lawns this big, but
Mhm.
they were all rental. And that was what people were doing till they decided what else they wanted to do.
Right.
And the numbers can work out more attractive than buying.
Goodness knows what the price to buy a house.
Yeah, I mean, so much plywood has gone to Texas in the last 2 years.
It's funny.
One of the things with Habitat that I learned that Lincoln County report meeting was that they are subsidizing a lot of those homes. Upwards of $100,000 for each home. That Habitat is coming up with funds to help subsidize the
Would it be-
ownership of those homes, because the actual cost is much
The AD
more than what the target owners could afford
yeah.
if they were not supplementing
You
it.
were mentioning AD Gray, I've forgotten the name of the.
Volunteers of America.
They seem to be doing stuff with other people's money.
Yep, they,
Their focus is senior housing.
yeah. But yeah, they're getting a lot of different federal sources and state resources that use federal sources.
I just wanted to make a point, like, what is it that this committee can do? And we've talked before about trying to attract businesses here, and I'm wondering if we don't want to look at it on the other end. Can we create a training program that gives people the job skills for the companies we want to attract, the businesses we want to get here? Like, what skill set do people who live in Waldeboro need in order for companies to want to come here and hire those people?
Well, they have to be able to have a place, but this is a chicken and the egg.
I know,
the
but
highest
it-
order.
To be able to afford a decent home, you need a higher paying job, and it is a circle that we're looking at, but trades programs, mentoring trades programs.
If you don't
Some
get
of the
the-
computer industries,
A good paying hourly wage in a factory is between $20 and $25.
correct,
And McDonald's is like 21.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
it's a lot of mentoring to get somebody up to $40 an hour. I don't.
there are programs out there, there's models for, especially for the trades programs that other communities in other
Well, we
states.
certainly don't have enough
doing
electricians
that.
and,
Oh, plumbers, try to get a plumber.
yeah.
It's ridiculous, but
Oh,
you know,
that's an interesting idea. Then
wouldn't it be great if
drive
somebody
income
who's a
instead of the housing.
single parent, you know, could get trained as a plumber and suddenly their income after a year or two doubles,
Yeah.
you know, and now they're in a better position to be able to afford a home.
Communication utilities are gonna explode too.
So Sonia has her hand up.
Well, on that note, I had a look at the Department of Labor for the state of Maine. So this is just a printout page, but these are job titles, number of openings available, employment, and then the median wage and average wage comparisons. The highest one I see on here is for the clergy, and they're getting $28.02 an hour medium. Okay, but it's on average, it's $27.77. But I've got this and I wrote the webpage down if you want to look at it, but you can scroll down and they list the occupation, number of jobs in the state of Maine, who's employed, what's available, and what their prospects are for growing. So you can see what type of market. And then I was kind of looking, these are the average hours and earning estimates for the state of Maine. And this is mostly in here for private, what percentage and what the average is. They're like, you're talking $28 to $29 an hour. There's nothing in there remotely for $42 or $52 an hour in there. And they say it's like total private is 32% of the sector. So there are not that many private sector jobs. A lot of them are government jobs or they're retiree type things.
So I
Can-
work in the building industry though, and the trades have been dying for people for 20 years, 30 if you want to look at plumbers.
Yeah.
You know, they've been trying to find apprentices and people to come in, and they do make very good wages. Obviously, the cost of housing is what it
We
is
have
because of the wages.
We have some upgrades in some of our equipment at the factory. And we meeting with an electrician today, and if you could only find a journeyman.
So, you know.
They should promote that in the schools. They tend to promote
Shop
sending them to
class.
college.
Yeah.
You know, the kids even at the trade school in Rockland, that's for the county of Knox, and I think they only allow the students to go there for a couple of hours a day instead of offering them a choice of doing trade school and having them do some of their high school work at the trade school. They have to bus them back and forth at great expense. There's some things that can be done to improve how that's done. You know, they can, promote, they have apprenticeship programs, but it's not for trades and stuff like that. These are things you can look at. But I was looking at this, you need to know what kind of jobs are there, what kind are paying. You make decisions, and then I was going, okay, if we go from there, and then I've been driving around the town making a list, what's there, what we have, what we don't. We can't compete in tourism because we really don't have the shoreline for it, or indoor hotel facilities, okay? So us, we can try and promote that it's a living, working community where people can afford to live and go somewhere else to have their employment or do their job. So I was thinking, if you make a list of what we can focus on and what we can do versus the chicken and the egg, and you pick away at it. And if that does that, that opens that opportunity. So, okay, that's my 2 cents.
Interesting.
And
Well, and
Good too.
to that point, Sonia, one of the things that they did in Gloucester, Mass, where I was working with the school, the high school. A friend of mine had created a fall semester program that helped students write their application essay for anything from cosmetology school through to an Ivy League. And it was tremendously well received. I've been in email contact with the high school, and I think they're just simply swamped. They just can't think of another thing. So I was thinking that I would approach the library and see if they had a room where we could meet with students who need some help with their essay, for an application essay for anything. And then just put some posters out, advertise it in the Lincoln County News, mention it in Elevate Waldeboro, and see if anybody shows up.
So that's an interesting idea. The school has a school to career program that they've had for many, many years. And the teacher technically for that program who runs it is employed by the Voc School. And she specifically works with students who want to create, they do a lot of testing around interests, skills, values, so forth, and to see what they can offer people to think about different careers. They have a lot going on. You might want to talk to her.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and see if she wants to collaborate. I met her a couple of times. She seems very interested in collaborating with the business community, just like Bob, if you remember, the lady who had that position before, who would use our businesses to help the students practice for interviews and so forth after they help them set up resumes and so forth. So she seems much on that vein, like that woman. So that might be a way to partner.
We had about 30 kids involved in that time I did it.
Right.
That wasn't a bad number.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Sounds like a fair
And
number.
That was years ago, Jen.
Yeah, they've had a lot of people in between that time.
Okay,
And so I think that it really, it has the same goal, the program does, but it depends a lot on the person in that position as to how much outreach they actually do to get involved with the community, with businesses and so forth with the kids. And so I would suggest, so she'll be back, she said, available in September. And so I told her I'd get in touch with her then also. She's going to be attending the Business Association meetings, and her husband became a member of the association. So he went to school here in Waldeboro and they live in Warren. But I would say she's got some good energy and interest. So good idea.
Great.
So is there something comparable like that, do you know, Jen, for people who are out of school?
Nope, there is not. And actually, that's a
That's a great idea.
I think people get lost once they get out of high school if they're not on a trajectory, whatever the trajectory is. And there, it's hard, I think, in a rural town for kids to get a clear idea of what's possible. And that was one of the reasons that the Business Association wanted to have a closer relationship with the schools, but the superintendent wasn't interested. So we lost that connection we had years past. Because having your own business, for example, or getting a trade and developing your own business are very viable ways of raising a family and making enough to cover your expenses and have a good life. But we haven't had a chance these last few years to really have any impact on that.
Jen, would it make any sense if we were to, because I would certainly be happy to help with resumes and interviewing skills. It's kind of an offshoot of what I've done periodically. To talk to, say, the community navigator, would that be of any help? Or are people a little bit more frantic when they approach
Oh,
the navigator?
Bob would know better, but if the community navigator would like to refer people who might need some help, crafting a resume now is different than it used to be. And learning how to highlight your abilities, it's a different language. And
Right, I just saw an article that came my way today about creating the AI
oh,
friendly
yeah,
resume, so, yeah.
yeah, that's quite interesting. Of course, that's another whole world.
But it's kind of the way resumes have been being read for at least 10 years now. A lot of it's computerized. If it doesn't get past the computer, you never
Well,
see.
It was read that way, but now we can write them that way. And that's, once you feed the information in and give the correct prompts, it's going to be very interesting what we can accomplish using that tool. But I think that it's probably, the kids in high school have access to some more resources than people who are not in school anymore. And that's probably a better target. Although I still recommend that we partner with that energetic lady in the School to Career on anything that anybody wants to accomplish.
I was just gonna suggest, based on what Ann just said about the community navigator. If she's aware of a resource, it's important for her to know that resource.
Mm.
Because she will identify needs. And one of them could well be someone's got to find a job and need to get their feet on the ground. And well, I know someone who can help you write a resume.
There's another,
Yes, George,
I'm trying to be good. There's another
be a good member.
force of nature. When I was on the school board, periodically or almost frequently, we would have to approve somebody dropping out of school because they've been a lobster. And
The board had to do that.
they what?
The board had to.
Yeah.
approve. Wow.
At that time, in the good old days, but the take-home message was. The teachers were kind of looking at their shoes because these kids were making more than they were.
Yeah.
But the reason I bring it up is not for that, but. I know young people who. Say, well, let's see, I could pursue some education and make a little bit of money while I'm doing it, or I could be a stern man on a lobster boat. And make $1,800 tomorrow, or whatever it is, but we're fighting. Instant money versus committing to a plan to get an actual long-term job. And
But either of those options are fine, as far as I'm concerned. If the kid's decision is to follow his dad's footsteps and become a lobsterman or a sternman. And get his license and do that as a living, that's a great living.
well, it is, but not, I think there's a minority of people who get drawn into doing something on a lobster boat. Who end up being successful in the lobstering
Oh, I see.
industry. I think it's a minority. The real issue is who is willing to do the time to become an electrician or a plumber.
Yeah,
licensed. And I think that's our kind of immediate gratification world is catching up to us here too.
We still have apprentice programs, right? I mean, you still get paid while you're learning your trade, I assume.
Right.
They're not as popular, and I can't think of the name of the business, Midcoast Energy, I believe it is. They've been trying for years to get people to enroll with them as apprentice. They desperately want to create an apprentice program, and they can't find enough people to who are interested in doing that level of work.
Mid-coast heat pumps similarly has been desperately looking for people.
I just want to add that we've just had a session on the MMA about apprenticeships. And as a business, you could apply to certain programs and they will pay you to hire an apprentice as long as it's a certified program. And at the end of the day, the person who is the apprentice is going to end up working somewhere with the skills they've learned. And there are many resources. There were at least 3 resources that were brought to our attention during their seminar. So it's active here.
So is it maybe getting the publicity out there, literally marketing from the economic
That's part of
development
it.
perspective, bringing all these resources, but making people aware that they exist
There is there is an
through the
income.
venues they pay attention to, which is Facebook and TikTok and other places that, other than a job board that they may not even know exists.
Yeah.
So.
Does this, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It's okay.
Am I hearing, I'm hearing all these great ideas. Does this mean we might want to have an off-schedule meeting to talk about how we might take this from ideas into a list of market resources, a communication piece for the community navigator, a coherent approach to the school to career gal, sort of figure out what it is we're going to do, because my fear is that we have our monthly meeting, and unless I've got something I know I need to do, I'll do it. But if I don't have something I know I need to do, I won't do it. So I guess what I'm asking is, what do you folks feel should be our next step to, gather these great ideas and make them, I hate this term, actionable?
So we've done this a few times. So we've created subcommittees of our committee to take on challenges that require more time than we can allot in this meeting. And we did it for our brochure. We did it for the solar farm at the transfer station. I was gonna say dump, but I'm glad I didn't.
Good call.
So we can do that, but what I feel this is brainstorming. This is great. So now what we need to do is I think we need to brainstorm a little more, but I think what we do then is we say, okay, is this part of the EDC's mandate? Is this something we should be doing? Is this something that we should be taking on and creating a subcommittee for? And I think that even goes back maybe to the select board to say, do you want the EDC to be working on a subcommittee level on marketing or ideas for job training, ideas for basically brainstorming these things? I'm not sure we're there yet.
But EDC, I mean, the goal of this group, I think now, we talked about the chicken and the egg. Any place you can improve the situation, anywhere on the egg or the chicken, is moving in the right direction. In other words, if we get more skilled people who maybe earn a little bit more money, then maybe they can afford a house, and maybe we can get somebody to build a house that's affordable. Because it's circular like that,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any wrong place to poke at it.
Okay.
Bob has his hand up.
Yeah.
Well, and also, I mean, you're not spending any town money,
Right.
so I think you go ahead and do it and then just tell the board and the town. That's what you're doing. And this is what we've come up with. You don't need select board permission to do that.
So as long as we're not spending
You're not
money,
You're not spending any
Well,
money.
they spend
This is
it.
all volunteer.
what Max, what's your view on this?
Well, should I go all the way back to the Waldeboro study and the disincentives that we have? Those are questions that are on the table. you don't need to go to the select board. Bob's right. You're not spending any money, so there's no reason to do it. Subcommittees have worked. I mean, that's what the Sylvania committee, there was a group that was specifically focusing on the Hoff's house, and they met. You know, outside of these meetings, they were able to get quite a lot done in just a short time. Whether it's just giving actionable items of Max, you research these items and see what you can get, or someone else on the committee can do that as part of their own research. Those are all options on what to do. That's the gist of what I can say on legal stuff.
Yeah,
So what would let me ask you this question, if we did a subcommittee like that, what's the goal of the in your mind, what's the goal? What's the subcommittees, what's the end product that we're gonna come up with?
Oh, no, you go ahead.
I mean, to me, it would be a compilation of what we've identified as approaches to help encourage, to help position people in Waldeboro at sort of any stage of their careers, whether from high school through to returning workers to the workforce, with a suite of possible approaches for them to take to do that, whether, and that could be given to the school to career person, it could be given to the community navigator. And then we'd also have a list of, okay, you need you need help with a resume. Here are the online resources. Here are, some people who've agreed to help so that it's not all going on one person in case we should be so lucky. Everybody all of a sudden wants to have their resumes updated. So that it's a thoughtful consolidation of the resources that are out there for people who want to investigate, first off, investigate what's out there, prepare themselves for what's out there, apply to what's out there, prepare for the interviews, as Jen was mentioning, know what kinds of clothes you're supposed to be wearing. I mean, goodness knows I'm no resource for that because I still believe in wearing a suit to an interview, but everyone knows that's not allowed. But to have that kind of a set of resources so that even though we all know it's sort of out there in various dress for success, this and that, but to have it really accessible and in a consolidated place, and as Patty suggested, have it on TikTok, have it on Facebook, and have it, as a piece of paper that also can be handed to people, because that would be my thought.
Anybody else?
I guess.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
can't believe how this works. I a minute ago said that any place we can better the chicken and the egg race would be great. But when you get into what you were just saying, the specificity of what you were saying, I realized that that's really got very little in common with finding out what what housing incentives there are, what programs, what networking you would need. I would love to have you send out 5 links to programs that we should understand. So if we're talking to somebody who we think might want to do something, I would love to know what those incentives are to help make it into a successful business to build some affordable income residents.
Well, I like that. So just to answer your question though, so there's 2 things. The houses are too expensive and people don't make enough money. So if we can help people get better jobs
and
make more money, and then at the same time also find incentives to bring affordable housing, create affordable housing.
Right.
Our hope is that we get those 2 guys.
Yeah, so the next time that report comes out, we're not a 51, we're a 63.
Right. Now, the thing that my question to the group would be, how do we make it Waldeboro centric versus In other words, are we training
Yes.
people to leave Waldeboro?
Yeah.
How do we keep these jobs here?
Sonia, you have your hand up.
Well, I was gonna say, my thing is like, I do research, I find things out real quick, I can dig into stuff, find out where to go, how to find out what it's gonna cost. This and that, and I guess by, like, if you want to find out about affordable housing programs, I'm willing to volunteer, like, I was thinking if we. Each person has an interest, like you're the broadband guy, okay? You wanna find out what is it that your big interest is, if you wanna just put something together. And then just share it with the rest of the group and we could meet and just have a cluster of information and then. Just decide from there. Me, I'm just trying to find out what's in Waldeboro, because I'm new here.
Yeah.
I moved here in 2019. And stuff. The family's been in South Thomaston and Rockland and Thomaston for years. So my life has always been out there. So I'm readjusting to a new life here. So, but- Yeah, it was close enough to the ocean that in mornings you can smell the thing, but but anyway, but that kind of a thing. And so I've got no objection. And it was an affordable home that I was able to find. And I bought it just before the prices jumped because I wouldn't have been able before. But I'm saying, I don't know, I'm volunteering to collect information for anybody if they want. I'm happy to do that. And if you want affordable housing options, I can,
Links to incentive,
yeah.
links that have been used as incentives to.
And then the second part of that is, I have no idea actually what it costs to build a house today. And when we talk about affordable housing, one of the things we need to understand is what does it cost to build that house, that affordable housing? And does that kind of destroy the idea of, Being
Without
affordable.
incentives, it kind of does.
yeah,
Well, the
Free
land
market-
cost.
Free market is not gonna work right now.
Yeah.
yeah. So then that gets back to the research and what incentives are there.
Yeah. It's basically.
And it
knowing
can't
your
just be
neighborhood.
nickel and
It's
dime
not
stuff. I
on
mean, it's
boards,
gotta
ask
be-
them what they think. It's that.
It's gotta be substantial. It's gotta be,
So I can give you some ballpark numbers. The square foot cost to build in this area right now is between $300 and $350 a square foot.
I'd have said 200 for affordable
Oh,
housing, but I'm
Well,
below.
affordable.
Yeah, that's-
Yeah.
I'm
that's
not
a little
talking
different, but
about-
Just, I will tell you, I've met a builder who only builds 1 or 2 houses a year. He's very specific on what he builds and he's building for under $100 a square foot.
How is
Brand new
you-
housing.
Wow.
So
I missed that.
That's
Who's
quite a
who's
range.
doing that?
Is the floor bounds?
Well, that's,
a
Is the
local
floor
builder.
bounds?
well, what kind of,
He
Yeah,
just
but-
doesn't build a lot. He has very specific customers he works with and he's not out to make millions. He's.
What kind of,
So if it's a 980 square foot, it's $294,000. That's the square footage at $300
Oh, I know,
a square
it's
foot.
Did you
crazy.
say 300 or
1,000
1,000?
square
it's
foot?
$294.
The going rate generally is around 300 to 350.
But we know there's scales of economy. If you're doing affordable housing, you're not building a house.
Situations.
You're building,
For
You know,
under.
That would be
triplexes or
98,000.
well,
Yeah,
that's the thing.
that's affordable.
Yeah.
I don't know, believe it or not, I looked
You're
into.
doing
you can
eight
buy a
duplex-
shed
eight
from the Home
duplexes or
Depot, one of
something.
those back things
Doing-
for 17,000, just
something like
wire it, insulate that puppy and you got yourself a house.
So it's gonna be your-
Okay, so let's get back to order.
Yeah, just
You gotta be creative.
a long, and there was like
How much?
2 different topics we were going on.
Oh,
One was
sorry.
Housing, and then there was the,
We're gonna go to
So
Home
you
Depot
asked
and build
about
shed
the
house.
Subcommittee,
Sure, why not?
what you would focus on and,
because.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 2 topics are housing, how can we get affordable housing in the area, or at least lower the median price in the area? And I think what you're getting at was connecting resources with people for job training or
Careers and jobs.
careers and job training in general. I
Yeah.
think that's the 2 topics that seem to be going on for further discussions or subcommittees or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Sorry.
No, that's all
Can I
right. I
throw a
mean,
term out,
So-
kind of what Ann's getting at, there's something, business incubator, but it can be more specifically career incubator.
Mm.
And just to put a
That
name to
sounds,
it,
that sounds great.
because it covers all of those things that she's talking about.
and,
We like to start with the list of what we have and what we need.
I think as a subcommittee, there's a lot of a lot of meaningful data to crunch there.
I mean, I guess if someone wants to make a motion that we create a subcommittee to research potential job training opportunities in Waldeboro. You know, and then we get some volunteers, and then we let our volunteers go wild. See what they can come up with and report back to the committee.
I think that's a good motion. I mean, I'm not gonna make it, but I would really like to see if anybody can assemble those links. That we would sit and network with people who might have resources. Where you incentivize affordable rent.
Mhm.
I mean, you raise the income and you lower the cost.
Yep.
And then your number gets better.
So one thing to remember is that the Career Center in Rockland has tons and tons of information on all the resources for apprentice programs and all that other stuff too. And Lincoln County Regional Planning has also stuff too. So don't reinvent the wheel is one of the things that we do all the time around here.
Yeah.
So the question, Jen, is do you think kids from Waldeboro are going to the Career Center in Rockland?
The kids from Waldeboro are hearing about programs in the school usually. And the school to career person would be one of the people who would be talking to them about the apprentice programs. The other place would be if they were interested and they were at the Voc school, they would be hearing about that there. I'm just saying for resources.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what the guidance counselors do. That's what the school to career person does. That's what the Voc Tech school does. They work with the kids on what their next steps might be. And they usually are fully informed about what is available. Whether or not people want to take advantage of that is another thing, who knows? But for adults after high school, they would have to probably go to either job listings, which would specify that we have apprentice programs, or the Career Center, for example, or one of those career days that they have all over the state. So there's a lot of information out there. There's tons of information. It's the Career Center's job is really to try to pull it all together. And I assume that they are able to do that. They have computers and they usually work with people on, because, in other words, the hard drives have a lot of that stuff saved on it. The key is, do people go where they can have access to the most information?
And again, it's still my concern would be, Waldeboro versus Rockland. There's, especially if you're not in high school and not getting, that data, that information.
You just have to remember that career workforce stuff and career stuff is regionally organized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you saying you think we're wasting our time?
No, I'm saying if you want to create something that is targeted towards the Waldeboro audience, right? People a bit
Right.
who might be interested, to not try to reinvent finding all the resources, make sure you get the resources that are already collecting it so that you're not like doing more work than you have to.
Right.
And so that you can target into and spend time on things that will have better results and not waste time if it's a waste on trying to resource things that are already collected somewhere.
Yeah. Perfect.
Hey, Jen, who funds the Career Center?
State of Maine.
I think it's the Department of Labor.
So it's a regional, it's a regional.
Yes, and then, and on top of that, there's also, which our Lincoln County Regional Planning Center is part of, there's also workforce development groups that meet every month usually, all over the county and all over the state, actually. And those are regionally organized usually, and they include people from the schools who are, and they include Goodwill, for example, who is helping the state coordinate some of those meetings. But that's another group the Lincoln County Regional Planning Commission could target or help you guys merge or see what's going on there already and see what you can get from there. You know, see what they're working on, see what they'd be willing to share about, see if they're, you know, they might even be interested, or maybe they've already had some thoughts about organizing things in a better way for us to get at. You know, it's an interesting thing. You know, Maine has got amazing resources for small businesses, for example. And how many people don't know about them? It just blows my mind because Maine's a very small business startup friendly state. And I think Maine is also got lots of resources for all of these other challenges that we have. It's the key is figuring out where to go and where to find the information. And sometimes it's just not in people's minds that their state has all this stuff for them.
Right, so maybe we can be that mouthpiece.
So, so does somebody want to make a motion that we pursue this?
Sure, I'll move that. Actually, I'd like to move that we create. Here, jump in if I'm jumping the gun, but
I think,
two,
no, you're doing good.
two subcommittees, one being for the affordable housing, looking into that, and the other being the brilliantly named, thank you, Patty, Career Incubator.
It's a motion. Is there a second?
I would second that.
All right, discussion?
You put duck eggs in a business incubator.
You get a penguin, that's business goose.
So,
All right, all in favor of the motion? Great, so,
Bob will abstain and Jen's putting her hand up on there.
so what we need is volunteers. What I would suggest is that we do that via email. So we'll solicit volunteers, get some emails going. And what I'd like to see is somebody volunteer to head up each committee. And I won't put you on the spot here, but if we could do that via email.
Kinda
It
early.
won't be me, so I can tell you that.
Kind of early days yet. I think we find out what there is and then,
Be on it first.
yeah, and see what what we'd be looking at.
Ready, fire, aim.
And
Yep.
the subcommittees don't have to do these types of meetings that we're doing right now. It could just be
Informal.
an informal thing, one or two people.
Yeah, then
outside
just
the-
Yeah, no, you don't need
report
minutes, you don't, it's informal. And then the objective is that
Information,
you would
yeah.
come and report back to this committee.
here. Okay.
That's the idea. So you guys go out and spend your hours and then come back with a concise 5-10 minute update of what's going on.
Yeah, sure, that's.
Intense.
Google Drive will be your friend.
Yeah.
And we've missed a technology update. You have a technology update?
I'm gonna keep them short. There's nothing new to report yet with LCI. Stuff is happening. I
Have
don't
they
know what
signed
that
the-
stuff
have they
is.
signed the agreement?
Yes.
Yes, they've signed the agreement. There's a check in the mail somewhere in theory.
Yep.
I've lost track of it. All those things have happened. We haven't spoken with Alan or Randall on where the planning is. I know a lot of planning has been done. And there's another interesting development with a separate company on the very edge of Waldeboro, for about 5, maybe 6 houses. Our neighbors in Warren are now online with TDS Telecom's fiber network, which is our first direct bordering neighbor that's had fiber internet available. And they're offering everywhere from 300 meg to 8 gigabit.
My God.
fiber.
Wow.
And fiber it's just the lasers on the end, so you can put all the gigabits in there you want, but that's what they're offering in terms of business products. I know because I'm on the border and my telephone pole's in Warren, so I'm signed up and I should get connected in like 10 days.
I'm very jealous.
She's gonna
I'm
have
going,
rockets.
well, so we're keeping both. We have cable, which we pay for the gigabit connection, and I'm getting probably a 2 gig connection through TDS. And I do higher order tech stuff. I have a router that can bond multiple connections. And Kim and I do so much remote work that we're gonna try load balancing that. That way, if one fails, it stays up. Also because I can, and I'm a nerd.
Right. That's exactly.
That's
what
the
I was
answer.
thinking.
And it's gonna take time. Our cell phones are through Spectrum, so once the other thing's up, I've got to figure out getting off of that and seeing what it does. But the reason that's interesting to me, other than all the cat photos I'm gonna download, and it's gonna be so many. Is you hear all the time when a new provider comes in with a competing service about the competing prices.
Right.
So, there's hearing what people see and there's experiencing it yourself. So I'm very curious to see how that conversation goes when I call Spectrum to cancel or change or whatever.
Spectrum has just boosted our rates by $10. And it's
Yep.
not like we have not.
And that's about right. So I pay, my Spectrum bill right now is, I think we pay 105 a month. But again, we both, Kim and I generate a lot of data, and with whatever the most speed we can get is what we want, and it's the upload that matters. TDS's plan is, the target for most places is 70-80 bucks a month for a gigabit. They offer $59.99 plus taxes and fees, which is $17 in random stuff. So call it 75. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on there.
That's competitive with the, I think with the beginning offer of Spectrum, isn't it, for internet, but not with the speed, not with the speed at all.
So pricing it is, it's also price competitive with what Consolidated's doing. Although Consolidated will offer 2 gig, and I could go like everything else we've talked about, right? I could go on forever, and I'll spare you that. It'll be interesting to see what they do. And I think it will start to give, I'll be curious to see what LCI does with that information with our other conversation. So even before any of that happened, the plans they had were decent. And then at the end of 2025, anywhere that doesn't reach, it's important this stuff happen now or in the next 2 years, because at the end of 2025, cable internet will be able to do at least a gig both ways. The latency will be different. Cable is going to do up to 10 by 1 in certain areas. Don't underestimate what you can do with RF. People thought a gig by 40 was impossible. That's what I have on cable now. It's actually 1.4 gig down. So they're rearranging the radio spectrum they use. More TV channels are going away. They're reassigning bandwidth to upload. And every time they run new lines, they get more fiber into their network to feed those silver boxes that spit cable out. That cable is really just the last mile to the house.
Do we
So-
want the actors and writers strike to continue?
We don't care because it's just data. That's not cable TV. Cable television, picking a channel, that's already dead. That's not where they make their money. Data has something like an 80 to 90% markup from large ISPs. It's different when you're a smaller place, but that's what a big cable company makes. But that $83 million Spectrum spent in Maine, that's coming, and that's not bad, but it is bad if they don't have to fight with somebody. So that's why I go back to the goal should be multiple providers. I'm not looking forward to what my home value does in that road, because if LCI builds, will be 3 networks on that pole. And you're around here, your 6-figure jobs, that's mostly remote, high-tech work or financial stuff.
All
All
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we've, anything on new business, real quick?
I just had the 2 quick things that people asked, but never got an answer for. Patty was asking about a Waldeboro specific study. State of Maine does have a housing opportunity grant program. I don't think Waldeboro is going to be applying for that, but Lincoln County and Midcoast Council of Governments are both going to be applying for it to look at those studies at more at a town focused level. At least that's what I heard from both. So hopefully that will address your concern, but it's not something we're going to be applying for. And then, Ann, you were asking about disincentives. I don't know if that's something you want me to go over now, or if I should go over that with the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and then they'll just report back, or I can talk about it next time, but I don't think there's too many disincentives. We pretty much allow housing anywhere in Waldeboro. The process usually is pretty fast and easy. I don't know too many. The only reason we've had so many delays on that Volunteers of America one was because a lot of public votes have had to happen on that one. I think the only real holdup we have right now is utilities. That's why we're trying to extend water, and that's why I probably will look at the Route 1 235 extension again to see if maybe there's a way of putting housing there, even if it's just only on a sewer system.
Or a medical arts building.
Or a medical arts building. We're just constrained with what we have for utilities. That's the main
You
problem.
sound like the source of all the information I think I want about disincentives and incentives. So if you're sending out links, I'm looking forward to your email to the group about everything related to incentives and disincentives for affordable housing.
Oh, it'll be,
Oh, it'll be a long email that you'll be glad that
As
you
long
didn't
as-
have me do it tonight.
As long as the links are a different color, so I can just.
It's
Can
important.
can I add one thing, Max?
Yes,
Yes.
Jen.
I just wanted everybody to know that the WBA chose a local website designer for designing our new website, and our goal is to launch it in the new year, along with our next, I guess, bringing everybody back to the fold.
Is that Brian and Amanda?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good. I love them.
Me too. Yep. So
Awesome.
anyway,
Good choice.
things are going well. Just in case anybody wondered, the board, we have some really great board members working very, very hard, and so it's moving along.
All right, thank you. Comments from the committee? I have a quick comment. What are we calling the subcommittee for the training and
Careers incubator.
That's a solid name. It's
I
really
thought
good.
so. Makes me
Put
think
that
of
on a shirt.
little chicks.
Careers Incubator Committee. Good alliteration.
That CIC, it sounds like the China investment.
And it could be a duck.
and I'm calling the other one Affordable Housing Subcommittee.
I was gonna make a motion that we create no more acronyms
There we go.
anywhere, ever.
This would be
You can shorten that down. a series of
AHS and the
letters, what would it be?
CIS.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
All right, but you had to say tax increment financing district every single time we're talking.
All right,
Or I won't talk about it.
That's a drinking game.
Move to adjourn.
so accepted.
All right.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody.